All right, you guys, I just wanted to have you watch a short video before you take your test. And the substitute will have your test on the desk. So when you are done with your video, you may go up and get it. Just some last minute practice problems I noticed people having trouble with. Okay, the first one is if you are given an equation that is, like say, let's write it in function notation. Everything's going to be in function notation. Okay. And maybe it's a quadratic. It's negative x squared negative x plus 2 squared minus 3. And the question asks you to find the average rate of change. Hopefully you looked at the links. The average rate of change between 2 points, and those points are from x equals -1 to x equals 5. Okay? Remember, x is our input, f of x is our output. So if we can find our output, if we put x into our input, so now we have negative, and then instead of x, -1 plus 2 squared minus 3. Okay? What's my output? -1 plus 2 is 1, squared is 1, but it's negative, so we have negative and then minus 3. -1 minus 3 is -4. So my output would be -4. Okay? And then what if I input 5 instead? I have 5 plus 2 squared minus 3 equals 5 plus 2 is 7, squared is 49. But it's a -49 because of the negative on the outside. -49 minus 3 is -52. So those are my 2 points. So you can put them in the slope formula, and some kids wrote stuff up on the board for you to look at, which is the 2 y's. So let's say -52 minus -4 over 5 minus -1. So the slope for this one would be -2 plus 4, because minus a negative is a positive, is -48 over 6, which is just -8. Okay, so that's the average rate of change between those 2 points for this quadratic. Okay, now it could have given you, like, drawn the quadratic and asked you to find the 2 points there. You just do it the same way. Or if it gives you a graph, you just find those 2 points. What if that's -1 and this is 5? And you can just draw over, right? And do your rise over your run there. Okay. So that's going to come in helpful. So remember that slope formula is on the board. Remember to look at that. Another problem people were having was to remember the order of operations, right? If I'm trying to solve something and I have, I promised I'd use function notation, right? F of x equals -2x squared plus 5, and I want to find my input for x. I want to find my output if x is 2. Okay, so that's -2 times 2 squared plus 5. Okay, 2 squared is 4. I have to do that first. I have to do this part first before I do my multiplication. Then 4 times -2 is -8 plus 5. Okay, and that's -3. But don't forget, you have to do this part here before you multiply it by the coefficient. And this number out here could be anything, right? It could be 3, 4, 5, -3, -2, -1. It could be anything out here, but you do that after you find your exponent, okay? Remember that, and you will be grateful. All right, you guys, so another function transformation problem that seemed to get students stuck on the test was sorry. If we, that's a terrible graph, but let's say we have a graph and you just have a random function like this there. Okay, and let's call this function f of x. Okay, and it wants us to change f of x. Okay, and it wants us to do some things with it. So I think it wants you to turn it over, right? So we have negative fx reflect across the x-axis. And then maybe move it to the right. Let's move it to the right 3. And then maybe we move it up 2. Okay, so here the first thing you want to do is reflect it across the x-axis. So here's the x-axis. So let's say this is up at positive 4. Okay, we're going to draw the same point, but we're going to draw it down at negative 4. Okay, so if I were going to fold this here along the x-axis, this point would match up with this point, right? And then let's say this is positive 6, then that would match up down here with like negative 6. Okay, and then this is 5, and then like negative 5. You guys get the point. It's going to look like if you just folded it there that you could, this is not going to be pretty, that it would match up here. Okay, and then, okay, so that's the first part. So the part I just did matches this negative. Okay, and that's going to be the first thing that you want to do. And then we can move it to the right 3. Let's make that maybe yellow. So this negative, it's counterintuitive, means move it to the right 3. So every point on my new line, I'm going to move it to the right 3, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you get the idea. So that's going to be like this new point here. And then the whole thing's going to move up too, right? So why don't we do the last one in like pink? Then we move this whole thing up by 2. So like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So my new picture should look something like that. I know that looks terrible in this particular case, but it'll be a lot easier on the test that you're given there. I could show you on Desmos. Okay, if you look at the top, this is the first one. Okay, it's just the square root of x, that red line. Okay, then I'm going to turn it, I'm going to flip it. Okay, then I'm going to move it to the right and I'm going to move it up. Okay, so the first thing, I took this red line, I flipped it over, then I have the green line, then I moved that over. Let's see if I can write on here. Okay, then I moved that over and up right there. Okay, the green line over and up, but I flipped it over first, oops, over and up to be here. And that's how I got the new function. So it'll make sense when you see it. I think it's the last question on the test. If you have any other questions or concerns, come see me tomorrow at lunch. Good luck. There are no calculators on this test, but you may now log off and head up to your sub to get your test.